Okay, this will be the fourth session that we do on Martin Buber's writing I and Thou, and we're doing a bit of a comparison between his style of writing and Zen practice. And if you haven't heard these talks before, I'd encourage you to go back to the first part and second part because they will explain more. So we're not going to go back into the earlier parts, but it does build one on the other. And it can be very helpful to know it came before. So let's take a look at this next section. And I think that we'll find here some of the vocabulary that Martin Buber uses, at least the translation of it, because it was originally in German, is very compatible with Zen language. And the beauty of language and speaking about this stuff is that it helps us to see the world differently. Zazen can help us see the world differently through being in silence and not speaking. But when we play with words too, we're creating a world around us. So it's very important to practice with words, just as it's important to practice without words. So let's take a look at some words. All right. So let's look at this first. So we're looking at this middle section here where it says, the present. It starts out with a word that I think we come to identify as Buddhist, but we can see here that the present is not confined to Buddhism. It's a universal concept. And the way that he talks about the present is quite unique and helpful. So he says, the present, not that which is like a point and merely designates whatever our thoughts may posit as the end of elapsed time, the fiction of the fixed lapse, but the actual and fulfilled present exists only insofar as presentness, encounter, and relation exist. So he's making a distinction here. He's taking the present moment and really helping to define and clarify, what does he mean by the present moment? We use the word fairly loosely in Buddhist jargon, like just be present or that kind of thing. But he's really helping us break it down and say, there's two ways to think about the present, and one way is not so good. The other way, we want to get into that way. So he's clarifying it. He's talking about the present as more than simply, he says, more than simply a point, more than simply right now. And he further clarifies the present, he defines it as presentness. He defines it as encounter, right? What do you think of when you think of that word encounter? Well, we encounter each other, right? We're encountering each other, not as objects, not as things, but as a real encounter, like a child encounters an adult for the first time, or a new person for the first time. They're like, whoa, who's that? They're a little bit cautious, as opposed to a child encounter. Well, actually, yeah, you can't use I was thinking a child encountering a toy, but they encounter the toy just as with presentness, right? There's some interest there. It's not as simply an object for use. The third word that he uses is relation. Relation. There's a relational encounter. Okay, so this is how he's defining what he's saying, the present. He says, only as the you or the thou becomes present does presence come into being. So the thou, remember the distinction between the I-it relationship versus the I-thou or the I-you relationship. Saying that the you or the thou needs to be a part of that presence. That's really when the present, when we, and this could be an encounter with another human being. It could be an encounter with an animal. We just had an encounter with an ant, right? It could be an encounter with the Buddha, with God, or however you define something beyond this world. Could be an encounter with the solar system when we see the images of it from the Hubble telescope, right? These are examples of thou. When there's a sense of, when there's a feeling of gratitude, a feeling of humility, awesomeness, to be in the same space as that other. Okay. One of you want to read next? Heather, you want to go for it? Okay. We're at the I. The I of the basic word.
The I of the basic word, I, it, the I that is not bodily confronted by a you, but surrounded by a multitude of contents, has only a past and no present.
Okay, let's pause there. There's a lot. Okay, so now he's further defining this I-it relationship, and he's saying, okay, well, the I in that particular relationship is not bodily confronted by a thou or by you. And there's a note here. It says, this contrast is developed and echoed in the following sections. The words are discussed on a previous page. Both presence and the present, as opposed to past and future, right? So the word, see, Gegenwart und Gegenstand. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we're looking at the wrong note here. Let's look at, there's a note on page 58. Can you go back to page 58?
That's where Erliebir Mirgen Guber, Lieb means body.
There's a sense of bodily confrontedness.
Leap is most unusual and means literally it bodies across.
It bodies.
Or vis-a-vis locations that involve Guggenhuber abound in this book.
Okay. So the sense of bodying, it's making the body not into a what do you call an object, but a verb, bodying, or a passive verb even. So the I that is not bodily confronted by a you, but surrounded by a multitude of quote unquote contents. Right. So I think he's making a critique of our overemphasis on the material aspect of the world and acquiring materiality as a means to purpose. He's being critical of that particular mindset here. Okay.
In other words, insofar as a human being makes do with the things that he experiences and uses, he lives in the past, and his moment has no presence. He has nothing but objects consist in having been.
Again, let's slow down here. It's too much. It's just way too much. Yeah, go ahead.
If it's an it's just something to be used and not really an experience. It's just, it's only useful as what it is
for the I. Yeah. Let's and also he makes this connection between that particular relationship, this I-it relationship, and the past. it's a past relationship. This is very interesting to me to think about this as something that is already past. It's not present. So he says he or she lives in the past, and his moment has no presence. He or she has nothing but objects consist in having been. So an object, by definition, he's defining objects as not things that are present, but having been, right? This table, maybe, I'm not sure. I need help kind of unpacking this, but maybe one example is if we were to see this table as a past event, we could see that it was a tree. But I don't know if that's even sufficient as an example. I wonder if there's other thoughts you all have on that.
I just keep reminding me of firewood and ash, and
Oh, firewood, yeah, Dogen.
like Dogen. I know that's not
Yeah.
pointing to, but
Unpack that. Say that. What's the words of Dogen about firewood and ash?
Well, they're all. So firewood is firewood,
Mm-hmm.
and ash is ash. Firewood can never be ash. It's always just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's always always a tree. It's always firewood. It's always ash. It's always the same.
Yeah, he says firewood does not become ash.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. I don't know exactly how.
It embodies. It is everything that it could be.
All at once.
If I'm in relationship, if I'm encountering it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's an object, then it's something I'm talking about.
Then it's the table.
I experienced it. This is a table, like I'm talking about the table, but I'm not encountering the table.
Uh-huh.
Like you talked about. Yes, I get it. That's great.
So this table that this computer is resting on, do we see it 100%, or are we looking at it as something fixed?
Fixed. Yes.
Fixed, yeah.
Fixed, maybe that word
Yes.
fixed.
That's a
Fixed
good word
rather
for it.
than
Fixed.
always. It's living, I guess.
Like a living being.
Yeah.
Or we could say the same thing about the chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We see them as fixed as.
Yes.
Yeah. The other aspect here I'm thinking of in relation to Zen is the non-dual relation between the sentient and the non-sentient. And Zen has a lot to say about that. We think in terms of living beings and non-living beings, and we would think of ourselves as living beings, and maybe the table or the carpet as insentient. And so we make this real split between the living and the non-living. But if we were, for example, just to take the example of a human being and look more closely at ourselves, we can see that we're also made of insentience, that there's also an insentient aspect to us. I understand this intuitively. I don't know, but I would be benefited at this moment from hearing how that might be, because intuitively I understand that, but articulating it is another thing.
Our blood has iron in it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Iron is not sentient.
Right.
It's a mineral found on Earth.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
But without blood, we would not be alive.
But we wouldn't be alive without it. Yeah. Iron is insentient, but it's an absolute essential ingredient for our life. Nice. Yeah. Sekai or Navab or Jocelyn, anything you want to add there?
I guess I understood when he goes to the present moment is an encounter and relationship, and that when you and in that, well, getting back to that, in that relationship you have interest, curiosity, wonder, openness, you have the heart mind. I'm trying to put it together with what we're talking about now, and I'm kind of losing the thoughts here, but that the I it is more of a product, so we don't have that same interest or curiosity or wonder or heart mind when we see it or use it, because we've already preconceived it and judged it, and we don't necessarily see it as a sentient being either, because we use it as a product. And the past to me is almost, I know this object and I know how to use it. So that's how
I know
that's how
that.
something that's how I'm seeing it. But and when he uses the word
Yeah.
contents to me means preconceived ideas, notions, and judgments and preferences.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I am understanding.
Really nicely put, Navab. I couldn't say it better. And I just to build off of that idea of how did you say it there? The content being something that we know. As soon as we think we know it, we're living in the past, basically. We're not present. Gosh,
That's good.
right?
Flowing vibe.
As soon as we know it, as soon as we think we know whatever it is, we're not with it.
That is really good, especially in relationships.
Yeah.
Good job. It's like profound.
Yeah, really right on. Really right on.
Well, and to me, it seems like, kind of like, things that are kind of ingrained in our memory before we even act upon it, so like preconceived, thoughts and everything. Like, for example, racism, it's there, and it seems like, the thoughts are there, but they're icky thoughts. And so, it's always going to be there, and, try not to think about it. And of course, you don't say such things. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Right. Prejudging. That's exactly, I think that's right on. When we prejudge, that's also a form of living in the past. We have some, I don't know. I just want to do an honest reflection right now. I can say that I feel like a big chunk of my day today was living in this I-it relationship with things. And so this reading has been really helpful to kind of shift that mindset. It's just part of our, it's not like I intend it. I think if we live in unconsciousness, then we just get sucked into that, because that's the society that we live in. Yeah, and we see things in that way. It's hard to break out of shift out of that. I wish I could say I was living in an I-thou relationship all of the time, but if I'm really honest, how do you know when you're not in an I-thou? There's the absence of wonder. There is the desire for results, right? You want something done and you want it done now. There's impatience. I think those are signs that we're not in an I-thou in the particular moment that we have to eyes.
What I noticed for me is, sometimes when I'm not in the I thou, I'm in self-cherishing. I've noticed that this past week, somehow the self-cherishing enters as well for me.
Self-cherishing, yeah.
Self-cherishing, rather than, and that's the it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it too. Yeah, the self-cherish, the putting ourselves above others. Gosh, this is a good reminder, I think, for all of us. For me, anyways. I can speak for myself. It's a good reminder for me not to put myself above.
Self-deprecating is
Me too.
Self-deprecating is the other
Yeah.
to that. Yeah, it's
Opposite.
yeah. So it's neither self aggrandizement, is that the right word, aggrandizing, nor deprecating self, right? Somewhere between those two extremes.
I think for self-cherishing that I've been noticing in myself is the attachment to something that I want.
Mhm.
So I don't know, that's an interesting thought. Am I trying to be above it? That's an interesting thought. I didn't think of it that way. It's something that I want that I'm clinging to. That's what I've noticed in myself when I'm self-cherishing.
Yeah. So here's another thought that there's some part of us that is in a sense, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I just want to question this. I don't have it resolved or answered, but we are sometimes forced into an I-it relationship, whether we like it or not, with other people. We're forced into that kind of a transactional relationship. And if we were to turn on the I thou or attempt to do so, it's very risky because we could get hurt. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have that all worked out, but I think the I thou, it puts you in a vulnerable position.
It does.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think also because the reason why it does that is because other people are just moving on in their day.
Mhm.
So if you have a wider view and make that connection and have that respect and gratitude for the other person, it's not always reciprocated.
Right,
And
right.
so, if we were all in this glorious I thou relationships with everybody and everything, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we put up boundaries
We put some boundaries up.
to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it would be nice to be able to have an I would love to learn how to have boundaries and an I thou, right? Your attitude towards everything. Like how would you be able to do that?
I think this is a koan. This is a Zen koan. Like,
Yes.
how do you be in these I thou? How do we cultivate I thou relationships, and at the same time,
Not.
Yeah.
yeah, like
I
then
think of my profession as a counselor, right?
they-
Right now,
Uh.
there are different professions, but when I'm in that profession, there's this like expectation that I be an object in that, and so that's interesting. So I notice when I leave work, I have to ground by being back in my body. Right?
Yeah. So the client in that case sees you differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This boundaries thing.
Just
Could
to
you-
resonate
Could you
with that.
repeat that? I didn't hear what she was saying. It's
Yeah.
difficult.
Is it okay?
I'm not sure what she was saying, so I kind of wanted to. Hello.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I was interested.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on some work I do sometimes as a counselor, and I was reflecting on that client-counselor relationship and how sometimes it feels like the expectation is that I'm an object in that. And so then when I leave work, I have to be intentional about grounding or being back in my body so that I'm not continuing my day kind of unconscious or in the I-it rather than the I-thou sort of relationship with the world, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I totally, this is, I wish I could have articulated this 7-8 years ago when I was working as a chaplain.
I did that too. I did that.
You did that too.
Yeah.
Anybody who's in this kind of a counselor relationship with another person. I remember working in behavioral health then and feeling very ungrounded when I would leave there every day. And it was like anything I could do to just ground myself. And day after day of that was brutal. but I think you just articulated something that, you put some language on what I was experiencing beyond just the ungroundedness, and that is we are seen as an it in that relationship, and it really does affect us. Anytime we're put like we're forced into being an it. Yeah, and so
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, with kind of what you're talking about with mental health and or behavioral health, DBT to me is very uh, coinciding with Buddhism, where it's like, you look at yourself, you see yourself in the mirror, and, ground yourself and just try to stay in the present and address what's going on. And so for me, it's always been such a challenge for me to just let go of the past, and with the constant practice and just starting to just kind of, I guess, think of a glacial pace, moving forward, and then the snow is starting to kind of come down and break apart and everything. So within the past couple of weeks, I feel like I've been very fortunate in being able to do that, and accept that. I just try not to see it as a selfish thing.
right. That's another trap we get ourselves. Oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Yeah. Well, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I understand sentient and insentient, but sometimes my brain has a hard time with words without definitions.
Okay.
So it'd be helpful for me to make connections if someone wouldn't mind defining the two.
Define. So yeah. Okay. I just want to open this up. Sentient, defining sentient versus insentient.
Just like
Sentient has the ability
Yeah.
to
it's
think and experience things, and non-sentient is not able to think or know. Right? Like,
Yeah, and what you said something earlier, making a connection to that.
that iron is not sentient in
got
our
it.
blood because it's just a element.
Right.
So like a dog and a cat, human beings tend to be considered sentient, but like ants aren't even usually considered sentient, are they?
Right. That's
mean,
true. That's a good point.
Anything that, in the scientific
In the
world,
scientific world, yeah, we have this like sharp dichotomy between sentient and insentient. And like a concrete wall would be insentient versus a cat
Right.
or
Right.
a mouse
Mhm.
or a human being. Yeah, but some would even question whether an animal is sentient even.
And you said that because you had asked a question.
Right, I was asking about, I was saying that we think of ourselves as sentient. Human beings think of themselves, but there is this. It's not that dualistic, because we have aspects of ourselves that would be considered insentient, like an iron molecule.
And then you mentioned in Buddhism something about duality.
Right, that's a dualistic way of thinking
Got
about
it.
the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not how I think.
Right. And we live in this scientific age. Like if you plug yourself into a science mindset, there's a sharp distinction between sentient and non-sentient.
Right.
I'm going to admit something that I've been watching this TV series called Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
seen it?
yeah,
I haven't seen it, but I know about it.
I've
Yeah.
watched the last 4 episodes and that's it.
That was it.
But I know how it ends.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was tipped off by a podcast that I was listening to, and I'm always interested in finding interesting things to watch. So I've gotten hooked on it now, and I can't put it down. And there is a violence. There's some violence in it. But anyways, I feel a little bit cautious about promoting it for that reason, but it does have an interesting storyline, and the cinematography is fantastic. Just the different views they take, the different angles with the camera, and then the acting is superb in it. So I've gotten kind of hooked on it, even though despite some of the violent acts of it. But this chemist in it is just a very interesting character. He's a brilliant chemist, and he gets a diagnosis of cancer. Do you know the storyline, Navad? A little bit, okay. Anyways, he gets this cancer diagnosis, and he and his wife are about to have a second child. He's in his, I would guess, his late 40s, early 50s. And as a high school chemistry teacher, he's not making ends meet, and he's just not gonna, he's realizing he's gonna be dead, and he's gonna leave his family with not enough money, and they're not gonna be able to survive and stuff. So he makes this really bad decision to start making methamphetamines. And he hides it for the longest time from everybody, as long as he can. And he's making like hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars doing this. And just, it's a calamity of errors. At the very beginning of this TV series, it's kind of horrible, but the way that he is able to see death is quite horrid. But it's the logical conclusion of the scientific worldview that dichotomizes sentience and insentience, where a body is just a bunch of chemicals, chemical compounds, atoms, and the dissolving of the body is nothing more than material dissolving. And I think that is, I think they really take that way of thinking to its logical conclusion, that we are nothing but really insentience. Once you're dead, you're nothing but insentience. And then disposing of that is just disposing of materiality. But when you see it played out graphically like that, you realize there is something really deeply wrong in that kind of worldview. Yet it's the worldview that we do live in. So it's important that we find this kind of thinking surprising, though. I think because that gives us a clue that there's more. There's more to us than just materiality. There's more, right? So on the one side, we think of human beings in some sense as as sentient, and then anything else as non-sentient. But that plays havoc in even it affects the way we think about ourselves. Taken to the logical conclusion, we're also insentient. But if you take it the other direction, sentience is also part of the insentient, right? Iron atoms create us. Iron is the heart of a supernova. And without iron, you don't have life. And it appears, from these human eyes looking, it appears to be insentient. But iron itself, if we start to take that to its logical conclusion, how could it not be sentient? That's another way of thinking. It's just turning around. But we also can take that to its extreme, and then we don't want to do anything, right? We don't want to kill a tiny ant, right? And I'm not saying that we should kill ants when we see them inside and not take them out, but we take it to the other extreme. And so finding that middle ground there, because we do have to eat, right? We have to consume. But we also, like with Buddhism, we take that very seriously. We see a lot of prayers over what we're eating. We acknowledge it as a gift, even though it's now dead and considered insentient, whatever it is that we're eating, even if it's a plant,
Well, it seems like, you think about the good, the bad, it's black and white, but it's like, like you were kind of talking about, there's the gray area, which is reality. So it's, not just good and bad, it's kind of like a circle. It is what it is, and you just kind of have to accept it and kind of deal with it and try to move forward. But you're going to have the memories, and hopefully learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, thank you. We just have a few minutes left. Any other concluding remarks you want to make, if any?
It seems like even in the death of being in Saintian, let's say you die, you're still part of Saintian. So you mix with that. So there's seems to be no separation because you're always in relationship to something or another, even in death or decay. You're always promoting life,
Yeah.
life and death. I mean, it's almost, I don't know.
I don't want to end it. I want to end it on that note, Nabab. I think that's right on. Yeah. All right. Well, let's close there for this particular. We'll make this our concluding remarks on some connections between Jewish thinking and Zen Buddhism, particularly the mystical tradition within Judaism and Zen. So hopefully this will, the idea here is to expand our vocabulary beyond the narrow confines of Buddhism and see that this kind of thinking exists beyond one religion. And even in humanistic thinking, I would think that we could probably find it there as well. But anyways, we're just looking outside a little bit. And I hope you all have enjoyed this little excursion into Jewish thinking. I want to say that I don't have Martin Buber or Jewish mysticism figured out by any stretch, but I think it's helpful to kind of wrestle with it, and that's all we're doing here is just wrestling with it. I'm sure there's way more here than we've really touched on, and I just want to respect that. No authority on this matter. All right. Thank you.